Okay. Hey everyone. Today we will continue our lecture on media propaganda, truth, propaganda, and persuasion. And the lecture 2 would be about the media arsenal of World War II. So, right now, I want to say that we uh, we always use social media, and whenever you open your phone, you see political news, advertisements, Instagram posts, TikTok recommendations, message from influencers. And now imagine that this continues all day and somebody is always trying to sell you something. They are trying to sell you an idea, a product, a belief, a lifestyle. And uh, humans are emotional creatures, as we all know, and throughout history, government quickly discovered something important. Like, if you can control information, you can influence behavior. And today we are discussing perhaps the greatest example of this in human history and World War II. And when people think about World War II, they think about like tanks, as I have talked during the last lecture, about bombers, battles, soldiers. But this lecture is about the battlefield of inside people's mindset inside of them. So, uh, World War II lasted from 1939 till 1945, and this was 6 years. And entire societies transformed during this time, and millions mobilized. But uh, previous wars existed before, and wars have always existed. But however, World War II happened during something revolutionary, the rise of mass media. And for the first time, radio entered homes, newspapers reached millions daily, cinema became widespread, and even printing technologies became faster. So, um, what is propaganda really? So, before we continue, I want to remind you what is propaganda really. So, many people immediately think that propaganda equals lies. Propaganda does not equal lie. Propaganda is information designed to influence attitudes, emotions, beliefs, or behavior. And so, during this lecture, we will talk about the poster, the radio, the films, the press, challenge, and everything that has influenced World War II through the propaganda. So, propaganda posters and why they have worked. The first major tool are propaganda posters. And posters may seem simple, but they were incredibly effective at that time. Why? Because they were cheap and you can print thousands quickly, very quickly. They are cheap to produce and easy to distribute. They were plastered on walls and they were transported across every major city. They are very visible and everyone sees them. So they were posted at train stations, factories, schools, and they are immediate. A poster gives information within seconds. So you can see the visionary example of something, and then you learn from this visionary example and can get the idea of that very quickly. And the famous example of this is the Rosie the Riveter, the USA poster. That was about Soviet Labor Hero poster and German Rational Imaginary. So there are 4 countries, 4 different approaches. So we can now compare these nations. First, United States. The US often preferred optimism, and let's discuss why. So, because democratic societies often require voluntary participation. So, people must feel motivated. This is the Rosie the Riveter. Why show women? So, because war created labor shortages, factories needed workers, and propaganda helped normalize changing gender roles. In Germany, German propaganda emphasized more about strength, the unity, the idealized image, and national superiority. So, authoritarian systems often emphasize collective identity strongly. And idealized Aryan figures like strong geometric design, enemy portrayed as threatening, corrupt, and inferior, dehumanization was central at that time. They showed that other countries are the enemies of them and they should be dehumanized to kill them and get rid of them. So, the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom emphasized more resilience. So, the famous posture of the United Kingdom was the keep calm and carry on. And there is a question why we need to keep calm because they thought that panic destroys societies, and that's why their slogan was to keep calm and carry on. Soviet Union. Soviet propaganda emphasized workers together, collective sacrifice, shared struggle, because ideology influences communication. They saw that ideology influenced communication and thus they could influence those people through their postures. Okay, radio, the revolutionizing persuasion. Radio may have been the most revolutionary medium. Why? Because the radio speaks, you can hear it, voice changes psychology, and humans naturally trust voices. And because humans evolved listening skills. And when somebody speaks, uh, you can hear their tone, and this tone influence you as well. Their not only the tone, but emotion, confidence, and urgency as well. So here is the BBC example. The BBC became extremely important because millions of people relied on broadcast during occupations. The United States leaders used radio because complicated policies become easier when explained conversationally. And in Germany, uh, affordable receivers allowed messaging everywhere. So, control communication channels were controlling the narrative that were all citizens of this and that country were pursuing. Cinema. Cinema combines visuals, music, narrative, sound, emotion, and here is an example. Like a sad soundtrack changes feelings of the human being, and music manipulates emotion a lot. So stories create identification as well. And I just had a question. Like, have you cried during movies? I can see the sticker. Okay. Then I can say that you have cried during movies, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So, so, so when people cry during movies, it means that they can feel all these emotions and the narrative that is being transformed, that is being given to the audience by these actors and the scenario itself. So, and here is the example of the USA series, Why We Fight. It was in 1942 till 1945, and there were created 7 documentaries that were commissioned by the US War Dept. And this series were shown to all American soldiers and general public to increase the trust in the USA and to be used as an enemy footage against them. And here is another example of the Soviet Union, the frontline film comedy, and camera crews embedded with military units. And the Great Patriotic War was framed as established war that they need to be fighting against fascism. Here is an example of Germany. The Triumph of the Whale. It was in 1935, and there was shown the landmark in propaganda filmmaking. It was staged at the Nuremberg Rally as cinematic spectacle, and this was studied by filmmakers worldwide, including adversaries. The example of the UK is the Desert Victory in 1943, and this was the winning documentary of the North Africa at that time, the Academy Award. And this movie, documentary, I would say, celebrated British military success. So here is the case study of the United Kingdom. How was the role of the press? What was the role of the press at that time? They printed official government communiques and military reports. They censored or withheld information that could damage morale, published cartoons, movies, documentaries, and editorials that demonized the enemy, and they coordinated daily talking points like BBC, newspapers with government ministries. The case study of the United States. So, the Office of War Information was created in 1942, and this Office of War Information coordinated like all government messages, radio, film, and news. So, overall, all countries created their small offices or their communities to control the information throughout during the war, during the World War II. The Hollywood also went to war. So studios produced training films, newspapers that boosted the morale at that time. And Frank Capra's Why We Fight series explained why the war matters. And here is the class assignment. The battle. So for each propaganda mission below, I want you to vote which medium most powerful, the cinema, newspaper, radio, or anything else you find as an explanation for these examples. So for the first one, the mission, reach a rural farmer with no education who can't read. What kind of media you would use for this time? Charas?
Cinema, maybe, because he can't read, he could watch the movie or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I
Right.
guess.
Mm-hmm. Here you can use here we can use cinema because he can't because it's a rural place and he can't read, so he can accept everything visually, so it would influence him in some kind of a way. What about the second one? Make the enemy feel terrifying to justify extreme measures. Charas?
Is it posters? Because I don't know, like if the whole population were to use posters or like get together with the people who are in the war, maybe that would be the thing that they would use.
Yes, exactly. Here the poster would work well because You can, because posters are usually used to dehumanize people, dehumanize the enemy. And here, when the government wants to make the enemy feel terrifying to justify their extreme measures of Holocaust, for example, that was used in World War II, they were justifying the Holocaust. They were justifying their terrible actions, their attack, their bombs. So to influence others, they used posters to make it to justify their own actions. So the third one, mission, justify the war to an educated, skeptical urban audience. I'm sorry.
Could news also be used, like BBC, like a radio or something, to influence the people's thoughts and decisions?
Yes, exactly. Here would work the best press, film, or the radio itself, because the tone would influence citizens of this and that country to justify the war to an educated urban audience, because educated urban audience differs a lot from a rural farmer who can't read. And the last one, recruit women into factory work quickly.
I don't know about posters if they would work on them, like to make them work quickly in the factory. Maybe,
Exactly. The
maybe.
po- uh-huh, uh-huh.
No, 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 go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Exactly. The poster would work here the best because there was already an example with recruiting women into factories. And at that time, the poster worked very well. So to influence citizens, they use posters so they can recruit women into factory work. Did wartime media die in 1945? So, uh, Rosie the Riveter was barely seen during the war itself, and it was rediscovered in 1980s by feminists and became a global symbol of empowerment. So it was far from its original recruitment purpose. And this shows how propaganda can be repurposed and live on in cultural memory. And the second example is the Great Patriotic War myth. In the Soviet Union and later Russia framed World War II as Russia's sacred sacrifice. That emotional framework has been reused for decades, and as recent and propaganda doesn't always disappear. It evolves and gets repurposed all the time. So the press controlled truth. Finally, let's talk about the press. Every country is censored. The difference were in degree and transparency. So USA and the UK, there some press freedom existed all the time, even during the World War II. It existed, but with warnings, social pressures, or legal risks. However, in the Soviet Union and Germany, the total state control was dissent and could mean arrest or execution, and they were all killed or arrested due to their freedom of voice. And all sides showed victories and heroism, but all of them hit that devastating defeat, friendly fire casualties, and war crimes and internal dissent. If you can dig deeper in history, you can see that some after World War II, lots of countries hit how many of their citizens were killed. And this was one of the side of the propaganda. Of course, it shows the great victory and heroism, but they were hiding the devastating defeats. And the press was never fully free during total war. But of course, citizens experienced very different levels of awareness at that time. It depended on the country itself. Like I have divided into two, like Soviet Union and Germany, they had a total state control. However, the USA and the UK had some press freedom, And here we have traveled through the media arsenal of World War II, and it was from bold posters and intimate radio voices to powerful films and controlled newspapers. And I want to say that the key lesson here was that mass media can shape reality itself when coordinated with state power. So the techniques developed in the 1940s, most of the emotional appeals, repetition, enemy dehumanization, hero narratives, and all of this are still used today in politics. Of course, in advertising, each and every uh, seller wants you to buy their product. So it is used a lot in advertising. So propaganda advertising is some kind of propaganda itself, and social media as well. So as we continue this series on truth, propaganda, and persuasion, I want to thank you all very much for your attention today and participation. I'm happy to take any questions now if you have them.
Thank you too for this lecture as well. And yeah, we'll be waiting for the next ones to come.
Thank you so much.